This is shared property. Let us out." That was the screech of Serafina Sterling Vane, the president of the Sapphire Heights Community Association, screaming at the top of her lungs as I pressed a single, silent button on my remote, causing steel bollards to rise from the ground with a mechanical hiss, instantly trapping 30 luxury vehicles inside my backyard. Engines were idling, the smooth jazz cutting off mid-note, and champagne glasses were frozen in the air as the realization hit them. The exit was gone, and their exclusive party had just become a federal crime scene. 5 minutes earlier, the Sapphire Heights elite had rolled into my private sanctuary like it was a pop-up resort they were entitled to. Phones out, live streaming, charging strangers exorbitant fees for exclusive access to a space I had built with my own hands for disabled children. And right at the center of it stood Serafina, face flushed red, pounding on the reinforced steel bars, still yelling that she owned the place. What the HOA didn't know, what none of them knew, was that every entrance to this property had just been reprogrammed under a brand new federal access system, and I still had full control of it. That was the moment their gala turned into a nightmare they couldn't scream their way out of. But before we get to the flashing lights and the handcuffs, let me back up and tell you how a foster kid with nothing but a duffel bag became the guy who could cage 30 socialites with the push of a button. My name is Dr. Julian Jules Blackwood, though everyone just calls me Jules, trauma surgeon at City Central Trauma Center, and the path to this beautiful, gated hellscape wasn't paved with gold. It was paved with 12 different foster homes before I turned 18, sleeping on cold garage floors, eating stale cereal for dinner, and wearing hand-me-downs that were always 2 sizes too big or too small. Poverty teaches you one undeniable truth, which is that nothing is guaranteed, absolutely nothing. So you earn every meal, every roof, every chance at something better. And when I finally clawed my way through medical school, working 3 dead-end jobs and sleeping in the hospital library stacks, I promised myself I'd build a space where kids like me, kids the world had written off, could feel safe. Not charity, not pity, just safe. That is why I spent 80 grand on a therapeutic pool, not for myself, not for pool parties, but for kids with muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, and spina bifida, children whose own bodies fight them every single day, who need warm water and gentle resistance to move without the agony of gravity. The pool sits behind my house in Sapphire Heights, a beautiful neighborhood of old money, new money, and whatever category I fell into. Earned money, the kind that comes with scars you can't see. But apparently, earned money doesn't buy you respect from people like Serafina Sterling Vane, a woman who inherited $50 million, never worked a day in her life, married into another $50 million just for sport, and 6 months ago bought her way into becoming our HOA president through strategic donations and influence peddling. You could smell her before you saw her, a scent of French perfume that costs more than most people's mortgage, hitting you like a physical wall. Everything about her screamed money without purpose, from the designer clothes that cost more than my first car to the jewelry that could fund a small hospital wing. But what really made my skin crawl was the way she looked at my pool. She didn't see the ramp for wheelchairs or the specialized lifts. She saw wasted potential, looking at it like it was a diamond necklace worn by a beggar. I first noticed her attention 3 weeks ago, watching through the fence during the kids' therapy sessions, not with the warm curiosity of a neighbor, but with the calculating stare of a predator measuring its prey. Then came the questions, casual at first, asking if I really needed all that space, if I had considered the community benefit of sharing such lovely amenities, her voice carrying that particular sickly sweet tone rich people use when they want to take something from you. Sweet on the surface, but absolute poison underneath. Last week, she approached me directly, calling me darling, and talking about neighborhood wellness initiatives, suggesting my pool could be a wonderful community resource. And when I explained about the therapy programs, the specialized equipment, the insurance requirements, and the fact that it was my private property, she laughed. She actually laughed in my face, telling me that beautiful spaces belong to beautiful people, and implying that someone with my background should understand the importance of sharing with those who can truly appreciate luxury. The taste of old rage filled my mouth, the same metallic flavor I'd swallowed in 12 different foster homes when adults decided what was mine wasn't really mine. But I stayed calm, surgical calm, telling her it wasn't for sharing, it was for healing. She dismissed me with a wave of her hand, saying, We'll see about that. And I should have known then that this woman was about to turn my sanctuary into a war zone. 3 days later, I found out exactly what "we'll see about that" meant. I'd been at the hospital for 16 hours straight, dealing with 3 trauma cases, including a 10-year-old hit by a drunk driver. The kind of day that strips your soul bare, and I pulled into my driveway at 2 a.m. still wearing surgical scrubs, only to hear music coming from my backyard. Not just any music, but a full-string quartet playing Brahms while 30 people in evening wear sipped champagne around my therapeutic pool. The smell of truffle oil and expensive wine mixed with the chlorine I carefully balanced for children's sensitive skin and crystal stemware floated in the water like luxurious pollution, disrupting the filtration system I maintained for kids with compromised immune systems. But that wasn't the worst part. Serafina had turned my sanctuary into a business, with a professional catering staff serving hors d'oeuvres, a bartender mixing drinks at a floating bar anchored to the shallow end, and a sign by the gate reading, "Exclusive Aquatic Experience, $750 per person." I walked over to Serafina, who was holding court near the diving board where little Lily practiced her water therapy 3 times a week, and for a split second, I saw a genuine surprise in her eyes, like she'd forgotten this was actually my property. She welcomed me to her inaugural community wellness soiree, gesturing grandly at the chaos, and when I told her this wasn't community anything, that it was my private pool, she laughed that breaking crystal laugh again, reaching into her purse to pull out a $20 bill. She handed it to me, telling me it was a little something for my trouble, thanking me for being accommodating to my betters. The paper felt like acid in my palm. $20 for my $80,000 therapeutic pool from someone who probably spent more than that on her morning coffee. I knew that property liability insurance gets voided the moment you allow unauthorized commercial use, meaning one slip, one injury during Serafina's party, and I could lose everything. The house, the pool, my ability to help kids who needed it most. I told her to leave, told all of them to leave, but her smile never wavered as she produced a folder from thin air, claiming that HOA bylaws clearly state private amenities can be utilized for community benefit during emergency situations. What emergency? A neighborhood wellness crisis, she claimed, citing a lack of recreational facilities as a public health emergency, which was laughable considering the 30 people around us collectively own more wealth than some small nations. She claimed she was elected to make decisions for community welfare, and as the conversation attracted an audience of guests with phones out, she delivered the killing blow, saying loudly that beautiful spaces belong to beautiful people, and that surely someone with my background understood that some things are simply beyond my proper stewardship. There it was, the real reason, not community wellness, not neighborhood benefit, just the simple, ugly belief that poor kids don't deserve beautiful things. But while she was explaining my unworthiness to her audience, I overheard her on the phone taking reservations for next month at the same price point, confirming that this wasn't impulse or entitlement, it was business. She was literally monetizing my property, turning my kids' therapy space into her personal revenue stream, and she'd just made the colossal mistake of doing it in front of witnesses. The next morning brought consequences that hit harder than a scalpel. My phone rang at 6 a.m. with Dr. Richard Sterling, the chief of staff at City Central, his voice tight with concern as he asked me about calls they'd been receiving from concerned citizens reporting that one of their surgeons was being difficult about community cooperation and refusing to share medical facilities with disabled children. The twisting in my stomach felt familiar, that sick sensation of foster care where adults decide your story without asking for your version, and even though I tried to explain, he warned me that the hospital board hates controversy. After I hung up, I found 3 voicemails from the Sapphire Heights Management Company, notifying me that Serafina had filed a formal complaint against me for community obstruction and antisocial behavior, painting me as a bitter, selfish doctor who hated the community, using photos of me confronting her at 2 a.m. in my scrubs, looking exhausted and angry, against photos of her smiling guests. By noon, the neighborhood app was exploding with posts about my hostility, and at 3 p.m., Serafina knocked on my door with 2 uncomfortable board members, Jim and Michelle, and a folder thick enough to choke a horse. She read from the bylaws about emergency powers allowing for temporary community use of private amenities, and when I questioned the validity of these amendments, noting the inconsistent formatting and fresh signatures, She smirked, claiming they were recent updates for the greater good. I demanded to see the original bylaws filed with the county, and for a split second, her smile faltered, a crack in the porcelain mask, before she dismissed my request as irrelevant. But I had seen enough. The amendments were rushed, sloppy, and desperate. I called my property lawyer, Arthur Artie Lowe, a sharp guy who specialized in HOA disputes, and he confirmed that emergency powers definitely can't be used to seize private property for commercial use, suggesting that if someone is trying to invoke emergency authority for this, they're either ignorant of the law or banking on me being ignorant of it. That night, I went to the county records office website and pulled the original documents from 1995, and then I started making phone calls to other homeowners. What I found made my blood run cold. Serafina had done this before, 3 times, seizing a tennis court, a workshop, and a garden from other residents until they were bullied into moving or selling. She used the same playbook every time: emergency declarations, social pressure, and financial pressure until people gave up. But those families had moved. I wasn't moving. Unlike them, I had surgical precision and the absolute certainty that sometimes the right thing to do is cut out the cancer before it spreads. 3 days later, Serafina escalated the war. I got a call from the state medical board regarding a complaint about my fitness for practice, alleging unstable behavior, inappropriate conduct with minors, and substance abuse, allegations that could end my career instantly. She wasn't just coming for my property, she was coming for my life. That evening, a notice was taped to my door for an emergency HOA assessment of $2,000 for community wellness infrastructure, literally billing me to modify my own property for her parties. Then came the local news segment, painting me as the villain who hoarded resources from disabled children, sparking a viral hate campaign against me. But in the noise of the internet hate, I found a message from Elena Rossi, a previous victim whose workshop had been stolen. We met at a coffee shop, and she brought a box of documents that revealed the full scope of the nightmare. Serafina hadn't just been forging recent amendments. She'd been systematically altering HOA documents for 3 years, creating fake emergency powers and fake board approvals. But Elena had missed one crucial detail in the original 1995 charter. Any amendments to community use policies required approval from affected property owners. Every single one of Serafina's amendments was automatically invalid. She had been committing fraud, multiple felonies, for years. I took this to Artie, and as we laid out the puzzle pieces, the forged charter, the bank records showing unauthorized assessments, the insurance fraud where she canceled homeowners' policies and replaced them with commercial ones that didn't cover the owners, Artie's face went pale. He realized this wasn't just HOA overreach. This was organized fraud, federal wire fraud, maybe even RICO territory. Serafina had generated over $300,000 in revenue from stolen amenities, destroying people's financial futures for her party money. Artie had contacts, and he found out the FBI's white-collar crime division had been building a case against her for 6 months. That afternoon, I met with Special Agent Harper Vance, who explained that Serafina was running a multi-state scheme, targeting the elderly and vulnerable, but I was the first victim with the resources to fight back. She asked for my cooperation in a controlled operation. Let Serafina proceed with her next event while they documented everything to build an ironclad case. It sickened me to let her win, even temporarily, but for the sake of every family she destroyed, I agreed. The next 2 weeks transformed my property into a high-tech trap. Agent Vance connected me with a security team that installed hidden cameras, microphones, and the piece de resistance, commercial-grade electronic bollards at every exit point, invisible from the surface but capable of stopping a tank. Serafina announced her Midsummer Aquatic Wellness Gala, a massive event with 200 guests, a $1,200 ticket price, and a special appearance by the mayor. She was going to make $250,000 off my property in one afternoon. The FBI plan was simple: let the gala happen, let the fraud occur in front of witnesses, and then spring the trap. But Serafina, sensing victory, or perhaps just unable to stop herself, went for the throat. A smear article appeared in the morning paper accusing me of child endangerment. Child Protective Services showed up to inspect my pool, suspending my therapy program. The hospital placed me on administrative leave, and she filed a restraining order against me, effectively banning me from my own backyard during the gala. Then the final blow, Lily's mother called, crying, saying their insurance would no longer cover therapy at my facility because I was operating without proper licensing. Serafina had manipulated the insurance companies to cut off care for 12 disabled children just to secure her party venue. That was it. The rage clarified into pure, cold determination. I called Agent Vance and told her the restraining order was actually perfect. It kept me safe while she dug her own grave. The morning of the gala, my security cameras watched Serafina give a tour to a film crew, pre-selling memberships to my pool and bragging about franchising her fraud model to other HOAs. She was literally filming her own confession. By noon, the guests arrived, including the mayor and city council, all unknowingly participating in a federal crime. Then, at 1 p.m., a judge vacated the restraining order after seeing the FBI's evidence of fraudulent testimony, but I didn't go home. Not yet. I sat in a coffee shop watching the live news feed from Channel 7. The reporters stood by my pool, praising the groundbreaking celebration, while Serafina, radiant in a white designer gown, accepted a community service award from the mayor. She stood at the microphone, her voice booming over my property, thanking everyone for the honor and declaring that beautiful spaces belong to beautiful people, and beautiful people share. She announced the expansion of her initiative to 12 more neighborhoods, publicly confessing to a conspiracy on live TV. At 2:45 p.m., Agent Vance texted me, "All units in position. Execute." I pressed the button on my remote. At my house, steel bollards rose silently from the ground, blocking the exit of 37 luxury cars. Agent Vance's voice boomed over the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Federal Bureau of Investigation. This property is now a crime scene." Chaos erupted. Waiters pulled out badges, guests revealed themselves as agents, and Serafina, standing on stage, screamed, "This is shared property. Let us out." Her composure cracked like thin ice as Agent Vance approached with handcuffs. Serafina shrieked about her rights, her father's money, and her authority, but Vance just read her the charges: wire fraud, mail fraud, racketeering, conspiracy. The mayor looked like he was going to vomit as he realized he'd just given an award to a criminal. That's when I drove up. I walked to the fence line as Serafina spotted me. "You," she screamed, pointing like a banshee. "This is your fault. I was helping the community. Show me the deed, Serafina." I yelled back, my voice cutting through the silence. "Show me where your daddy's money bought you my property." She was led away in cuffs, still ranting about persecution, while her accomplice, the fake government official she'd hired, was also arrested. The news cameras captured it all: the breakdown, the arrests, the trapped luxury cars. It was the end of her reign. 6 months later, justice arrived. Serafina Sterling Vane was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2 million in restitution. Our class action lawsuit awarded $4.7 million to the families she victimized, funded by the seizure of her estate and assets. My share was enough to upgrade the pool and double the therapy program capacity. But the best part wasn't the money. It was standing by the pool 18 months later, watching Lily swim across the water without pain, her mother watching from a chair without fear of insurance calls. The neighborhood had changed. We built a real community pool, funded voluntarily and managed honestly. Serafina had inadvertently strengthened property rights for everyone in the country through the legal precedents set by her case. We established a scholarship for foster kids entering medicine, naming it the Earned, Not Entitled Fund. As the sun set, I looked at the water, smelling the clean chlorine and jasmine, listening to the laughter of children. We had taken a space that was stolen and traumatized and turned it into a fortress of healing. Serafina learned the hard way that you can steal a lot of things with money, but you can't steal the fight out of someone who has nothing left to lose. So, here is the question for you guys. When does community good become theft? At what point do we draw the line between sharing our blessings and being robbed by those who feel entitled to them? And most importantly, would you have pressed that button? Let me know in the comments. This has been HOA Stories, where the Karens finally meet their match. Stay safe and keep your gates locked.